to the Web3 Prof Podcast.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Leo Weese from Lightning Labs. Leo, thanks for being with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Leo, because I can't say it right, what do you do for Lightning Labs?
I write guides. I explain how Lightning works and how LND works and how you can run your own node and how you can manage your channel liquidity, how you can build on top of your own node, how you can implement, how you can integrate Lightning into your business or into your applications.
Amazing. That's great. Thanks, Leo. So can you just tell us a little bit about maybe your own story? How did you get into Bitcoin?
I've been interested in politics and economics before I was interested in Bitcoin. And that included the right to secede, that included free markets, that included radical new ideas for how banking can work. And when I heard about Bitcoin, it seemed too fantastic. It seemed too good to be true. That was around 2011. I was still a student of economics. And also I couldn't figure out how to run Bitcoin. I tried, I downloaded the client. It wouldn't run, it wouldn't open. I expected a GUI. It should have been there. I couldn't get a Bitcoin address. I couldn't buy Bitcoin. A friend of mine figured it out by sending cash to somebody across the Atlantic and received Bitcoin in return. I thought that was not a sane way to handle a new economic system. So I dismissed the idea. And a year later in Hong Kong, I was more aggressively trying to find people who knew a little bit more than me. And I couldn't find really anyone. Somebody hosted a Bitcoin meetup in the summer of 2012, and I was not in town that week. And I messaged them and said, when is the next meetup? Please, I need to know. And they would just say, I'm no longer doing this, but it's your meetup group now. You organize the meetups. That turned out to be great. That turned out a great stroke of luck. You don't need to know much about Bitcoin to host a Bitcoin meetup.
Right.
It is very valuable to have people around who have the same questions, even if they don't have the answers. So after every Bitcoin meetup, we just went home with a list of questions and we tried to research the answers. And yeah, I really did not know anything. I did not understand very basic things of how addresses are created and how mining works. But every month that we met, we grew in size and we grew with knowledge, and I figured out finally how to open an account with Mt. Gox and to run Bitcoin QT and create a wallet. And then I withdraw my first Bitcoin to my own wallet the first time, and I was terrified. I was afraid I would immediately get hacked and lose my keys, and I sent them right back. And I thought they sent me a YubiKey to secure my account, and I thought these people are geniuses. They have it all figured out. I'm going to trust them with my Bitcoin. But I did not lose anything in Mt. Gox, nothing significant. Yeah,
wow.
Almost. I was very, very close to losing everything, but I was following Reddit every day, and I got a bit uneasy when people started to complain about not being able to withdraw.
So, but what do you mean you got uneasy? Wouldn't you have not been able to withdraw at the same time?
In the beginning, it was just anecdotes. In the beginning, it was just people who had trouble withdrawing,
I see.
who observed irregularities.
Oh, really?
So I moved all my Bitcoin out and
into cold storage, or
no, into blockchain.info, I think.
Okay.
It was not a lot. I was a student who could maybe spare a portion of my first salary, which of course has been an amazing investment. But I also spent some.
Sure.
I've always been interested in Bitcoin as money.
Right.
With the Bitcoin meetup in 2013-14, we were already able to spend Bitcoin at the bar. I found that despite the poor user experience, just a very inspiring option.
Like, what does it feel like? We have the whole kind of technical world looking at people who were involved in Bitcoin that early, thinking, wow, like how cool is that? Now, at that time, it probably didn't, maybe it felt that way, I don't know, but I'm sure you didn't have a sense of what the world would look like today with BlackRock holding Bitcoin. But like, what was it? What did it feel like back then?
It really felt like everything was about to change, that Bitcoin was about to take over and that the world would never be the same again, and that you were witnessing this initial spark of a global explosion of creativity and innovation.
Wow.
And so in some ways, Bitcoin has been disappointing because it has not been moving as quickly as we thought it would be. And in other ways, it has been, quite inspiring because it is real now and you can use it.
Right.
And it is working very smoothly. And also, we have figured out the answers to a lot of these questions that have been bothering us since the very early days. How do we grow this to 1 billion people? How do we grow this to 10 billion participants? And I think we now have a relatively good idea of what is going to work, mainly because we have learned from the mistakes and the experiences over the last 10 years.
Wow, that's amazing. I love hearing from people like yourself and others in the community who were involved kind of in those early days. So can you just explain to us like what is Lightning for those of us who are kind of even just struggling with, this idea of Lightning?
Lightning is a payment protocol. Lightning is a way to transfer Bitcoin in the same way that the blockchain is a way to transfer Bitcoin. So I would think of Lightning as a payment system like Visa, MasterCard. It's something that uses Bitcoin natively, but it's built for payments. And I think it's very good at payments. It appears different to how Bitcoin addresses appear. It's optimized for expiration times. It's optimized for very quick transactions, very low-cost transactions, for being able to reject payments, being able to reject underpayments, overpayments, canceling invoices. All these are things that we cannot do in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is more of a settlement system. That's how we see it today. So for somebody who is new to Bitcoin, I think all they have to know is that Lightning is for payments and the blockchain is for settlement, similar to how your bank account would be divided into a savings account and maybe a checking account.
And that's a great way to explain it. Hey, a savings account and a checking account. I posted a picture of my kids selling lemonade at their lemonade stand, accepting Lightning, and I got dozens of comments about people telling me, "Well, that's not Bitcoin." That's not, or a lot of comments like, "Oh, it must have taken an hour to settle the transaction," or maybe a day later you got your Bitcoin or whatever. So maybe walk us through, like, why are people saying to me, "Well, your kids aren't using Bitcoin because they're using Lightning"? What's the sentiment around that? And what use case is it really solving?
When Bitcoin first became globally known, and I would say that started in 2014, but really happened in 2017, 2018. That was the reality of Bitcoin. It took a very long time to make a payment. Payments were expensive. There was uncertainty about whether we would really be able to have 1 billion people use this, 10 billion people use this in a self-sovereign way.
Yeah.
So for most of those around us, they haven't been paying attention to how Bitcoin has progressed in that time. And we cannot blame them. We cannot expect people to read about Bitcoin day in and out.
Yeah.
But it does provide us now with the challenge that we have to explain to people that in the last 7 years, Bitcoin has made tremendous progress in its speed, in its usability, in its utility, in its network effects. And this is now something that is no longer an abstract speculatory tool on the computers of a couple of nerds, but that this is now in the hands of real businesses and users who often rely on it, depend on it for their business models.
Right. Let's talk about stablecoins. So first, can you just tell us what are stablecoins?
Stablecoins are tokens that are denominated in fiat currency. So let's take the Canadian dollar. A stablecoin would be any kind of electronic voucher that is redeemable for those 100 Canadian dollars. So it's often a little bit similar to a gift card, but gift cards tend to be not redeemable for cash. They tend to be redeemable for products, but a gift card and a stablecoin at the surface aren't dramatically different.
Okay. So what excites you the most about stablecoins on Lightning? And maybe the precursor to that is, are there currently stablecoins on Lightning? Is this something that we can currently interact with?
Currently, there are pretty much only a handful of stablecoins used around the world. But they have proven that there is significant demand for holding US dollars outside of the US dollar or euro dollar banking system. Now, these stablecoins often exist on blockchains that are not Bitcoin, and they only exist as tokens similar to a savings account token. So something that you can use for settlement, but something that you cannot use to pay in a store. What Lightning is built as a payment protocol, has the potential to bridge that gap between something that people want to hold and something that is convenient to spend. Because as we observe stablecoin users, especially in countries with high inflation, especially in countries that are isolated financially, people tend to move in and out of these stablecoins to protect their purchasing power.
Right.
They might also use those stablecoins to pay their rent. They might use the stablecoins to get their salary if they're working remotely. They might use these stablecoins to maybe top up a debit card, but they very rarely use stablecoins directly for retail purchases. And that's because these stablecoins don't perform very well. They still carry a cost, a significant cost of transaction. They still have minimum sizes. There's still waiting time. So instead of paying at the store with a stablecoin, people top up their debit card with a stablecoin, or they top up their gift card account with a stablecoin and then choose later what to buy. Now, what if they could pay directly with the stablecoin? And what if we could do that on Bitcoin in a way that grows the network effects of Bitcoin rather than grows the network effects of those stablecoins? And maybe that way we can provide a better stablecoin experience, but we can also grow the utility of Bitcoin and grow the network and grow the network effects of a truly decentralized payment network.
So you're saying, what if we could? So I'm assuming that means you can't now.
We don't see stablecoins being used for payments today.
Right.
But we have this tool that we call Taproot Assets that has the potential to provide that. Now, what needs to be done? It is an active development. It is surprisingly functional, surprising given how young it is. And that is because of how much it is integrated into the Lightning Network, which is a mature payment tool.
Are you saying Taproot is young?
The Taproot describes a transaction type in Bitcoin that is only about 3 years old.
Okay.
And Taproot Assets relies on Taproot, hence the name, and is only on mainnet for about a year and a half.
Okay. So sometimes in some wallets that I log into, I see Bitcoin Taproot, Bitcoin SegWit. Can you explain simply what is that? What do those two things mean?
Those are two transaction types in Bitcoin. And for the ordinary users, I think they are almost indistinguishable.
Okay.
But if you're trying to program on top of Bitcoin, then Taproot transaction types provide you with certain options that SegWit transactions don't let you do. For example, in Taproot, we can create a very complex set of spending conditions. So the most simple form of spending condition would be a Bitcoin can be spent if you have the signature to the key that holds it. But what if we create more complicated spending conditions? And in Taproot, we can create very complex spending conditions, kind of if-else statements, but only reveal the statement that we're actually using. And by default, a Taproot address is spendable using its master key. Let's call it a master key. But with these spending conditions, we can create alternative options for how to spend those Bitcoin in case, for example, the master key is lost, or in case the master key doesn't exist, or in case the master key could also be multiple people. And now what if these multiple people don't agree, or what if they're unavailable? And that's very useful for all sorts of applications, including in Lightning, but is probably most important for a lot of these new off-chain protocols that you're seeing in Bitcoin. So assets on Bitcoin, side chains, state chains, whatever the buzzwords might be, they all rely on Taproot as their core functionality.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. So when we think about Lightning, when we think about stablecoins on Lightning, how will stablecoins on Lightning improve the everyday usability for Bitcoin, especially in payments, which seems to be kind of your passion? Like, how do we get more people paying with Bitcoin or on Bitcoin?
We already have hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin users, maybe millions around the world. We have millions of people using stablecoins, but they're not forming one network.
Mm-hmm.
Given that the utility of Bitcoin kind of depends on the network effects, whether you get paid in Bitcoin or not depends on whether you're willing to get paid in Bitcoin or not, depends on how easy can you spend that, how easy can you pay your rent, your groceries, and that's also true for stablecoins. So both can benefit from kind of combining their network effects. And as they combine the network effects, they become more useful, they become more valuable, and grow in their user base. And I think that's the most important thing for us and why we're building stablecoins on Lightning. It's because we want to grow the user base of Lightning. I personally want to be able to pay with Lightning for everything that I need to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't care so much what now the recipient of my payments does with their money. That's their money. So now if I am able to interact with somebody who wants a US dollar derivative, then that's a win for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also the other way around, if they are able to have me as a customer and also get their US dollar derivative that they want to hold, that's a win for them.
Yeah. In this the stablecoin world you're speaking about, is Lightning going to be a stablecoin issuer, or they're just going to build the infrastructure so that stablecoins can be used on the Lightning network?
Lightning Labs is an infrastructure company. We built the protocol. We built the tools. Issuers are most likely the existing issuers.
Okay.
There might be new issuers who, because of the properties of Taproot assets, aren't able to profitably issue stablecoins on existing networks. The network effects also very much benefits the issuers. If you have a small issuer, imagine you need to convince every exchange, you need to convince the payment processes, you need to convince the wallets, you need to convince the businesses to now accept your stablecoin. But with Taproot assets on Lightning, you only have to issue your asset and convince people to hold it. But it will be interoperable with all wallets that can hold Taproot assets. And everywhere where Lightning is accepted, the holders of those stablecoin will then be able to pay.
So the most likely scenario is that USDC or USDT, Tether or Circle come out with a Taproot stablecoin. That's kind of the ideal scenario, I think, that you're presenting. Am I right about that?
Yeah, especially those stable coins that are already issued on a dozen different networks.
Right.
I would expect them to be also issued on Taproot assets.
Yeah. And your suspicion is that this would be US dollar dominated, or maybe the euro as well?
Currently, there is mainly demand for US dollar denominated stablecoins. And that partly has to do with how the US financial system functions, in that there just is a lot of debt for sale, and that debt is relatively easy to hold by foreigners.
Right.
That's not always true for Canadian bonds, or that's not always true for Euro bonds. There's also national regulation that prevents issuers from easily holding those bonds.
Yeah.
Existing banks, often only existing banks have access to these bonds, and the United States is a little bit different. But also, the US dollar as the world reserve currency is in demand, especially in places that have relatively poorly functioning local payment systems or financial systems.
Do you see that that's really the driving force behind this? Is like, Nigerians, Venezuelans, these kind of countries which are really seeing in hyperinflation or inflationary environments where holding their currency is just subpar, and in Venezuela maybe they need to get into a security that is, or a currency that is much more stable.
On my travels, I learned that being close to the money printer is very important for just logistical reasons.
Right.
It can be just logistical reasons. If you are far away from the money printer, let's take an extreme example, Iran, that they are politically, geographically, demographically quite distant from the United States. Suddenly, US dollar cash becomes a logistical nightmare. You need to worry about the condition of the bills. You need to worry about fraud in a very different way.
Yeah.
Bills degrade. If you are, for a Canadian financial institution, exchanging old US dollar bills for new ones is trivial. They send a truck across the border and it comes back with crisp new bills, and they can dispense them in the machines. But if you are in Argentina, Turkey, Iran, where the local banks do not have formal relationships with US counterparts or the US Fed, it becomes quite difficult. And you will notice, even in places that tourists frequent, that you would think Thailand, that's a very well-connected place, you find different rates for different US dollar bills, depending on their condition and depending on their size.
Really?
A crisp $100 bill will give you more Thai baht or more rial or more Turkish lira than a faded $20 bill. So stablecoins avoid that nightmare.
Wow.
They do not degrade. They can be made divisible. They can be consolidated. They're clearly superior to cash. And on top of that, we have this phenomenon where the US dollar supply has been rapidly increasing in the last 5 years, much faster than it did in the 50 years before, but mainly in electronic terms, not in cash. So the literal printing press is not keeping up with demand for dollars.
Interesting.
And stablecoins they also have, eventually just the amount of cash you need to carry with you becomes too large, and stablecoins solve all of that.
So if I'm in Iran and I'm in an environment where there is no US dollars, or you can't get US dollars, how do stablecoins actually get into the system? Like if I'm going to take my Iranian currency and put it on a centralized exchange, which allows me to get, do you know what I mean? Like how do you actually get that first access?
Foreign remittances or trade. It's either people buying things that they need from Iran or sending money back home to Iran.
Okay, so when you're in the system, it's still nearly impossible to get those dollars. You have to have a relationship outside the system, like a remittance from a relative or something like that.
There are people who trade currency. There are people who take the train over to Turkey or fly over to Qatar, and they bring back currency. Okay,
so it's a bit more black market-like than an official system, because those regimes have the ability to kind of stop the supply, or they're motivated to stop the supply.
There's a lot that regimes can do to control how money flows around. And the most obvious one is to crack down on the money changers and to crack down on the markets. I don't really think stable coins have like a huge impact on that. It might be easier to hide your money, but it's not easier to hide the fact that you're a money changer.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I get that. What technical or economic hurdles still need to be solved for stablecoins on Lightning to gain mainstream traction?
I think currently we mainly need issuers of stablecoins on Bitcoin. We do have the protocol and the infrastructure in place for wallets and for exchanges, but that now also needs to be implemented. Especially mobile wallets are a challenge in Lightning. Having a proper self-custodial wallet that handles channels is just a difficult thing to do from an engineering perspective. It's something that the Lightning industry has made great advancements on in the last few years. There are now quite reasonable, quite well-made Lightning wallets, and I would expect some of them to also handle stable coins in the future, simply because of how big the demand is.
Are you able to give us some of those wallet names that you think do well in that area?
I can tell you what wallets I'm personally using.
Yeah, tell
I'm
us what you
using
use.
Phoenix, and I'm using Zeus. I'm using Zeus connected to my own node. I run my own node at home, and Phoenix is a great interface for that. I do also recommend Phoenix to advanced users if they want a node on their own phone, because I think it works really well now. Phoenix is a bit more polished. I recommend Phoenix to serious Lightning users who do not want to engage with what's happening underneath the surface.
And that's Phoenix with a PH.
Yes.
That one.
Yeah.
With a little green wing
Yes.
like logo
From
for those of you who are looking at.
async.
Okay.
ACINQ.
Perfect. Okay, that's helpful. I think people appreciate knowing, you know, what are super users using, like you, Leo. Everybody likes to understand that.
But now you can also imagine what the benefit to Bitcoin is in those wallets. Those are existing Bitcoin wallets that can massively grow their user base by adding the ability to hold stablecoins. And these users then have access to both Bitcoin and stablecoins over the same payment interface. And which one they use becomes just a personal question. Which one they accept becomes just a personal question. There is no coordination problem that we have right now, where I have to ask you, do you take stablecoins? Well, which ones? On which network? And then suddenly the wallets are interoperable, but I only have to ask you, can I pay you over Lightning? Then you can choose for yourself which stablecoin you want to hold and which wallet you want to use.
And just so I understand correctly, the barrier here is the stablecoin issuers. The technology is ready to go. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, but I wouldn't call it a barrier. I would say it's the next step.
The next step. Okay, great. I like that perspective. That is the next step. Okay. How important is interoperability between Lightning and other scaling layers like sidechains and rollups, and for the long-term success of Bitcoin?
Lightning is emerging as that interoperability layer. Exactly what you hold Bitcoin for, what your user profile looks like, or what kind of level of programmability you want, that probably determines which sidechain or which protocol you use. Lightning just helps you then move that value quickly between those chains. You might want to use Spark for some reason. I might want to use Arc for another reason. And now we can still interact with each other over Lightning. And that emerging property of Lightning, I think, is very clear because all these Spark, Arc, all these sidechain wallets, they have Lightning front and center, and they expect Lightning to be the main portal for how you move value in and out, and what you then do inside of the app with it, whether this is for consolidating UTXOs or DCAing, stacking, or whether you need the programmable properties of those layers. That's up to you.
Okay, that's great. Can you share examples of where interoperability has shown promise?
I think it's really payments. In using Lightning, with the Lightning accepted moniker, we can have quite a large variety of users and from different backgrounds with different needs, all interact with each other. Imagine somebody who very rarely makes Lightning payments, who very rarely uses Bitcoin for payments. They might choose a wallet like Moon, which keeps their funds on chain. Imagine somebody who wants to buy $10 worth of Bitcoin every day. They might choose a liquid wallet like Aqua or Bull Bitcoin to just cheaply stack those UTXOs, or somebody who uses a stablecoin, or somebody who now wants the properties of Arc. They have very different needs and they choose their wallets consciously for very different reasons, but they're still all able to pay at the merchants here in Vancouver because they have this Lightning interoperability.
Yeah. It is, I think one of the challenges I see with people who hold Bitcoin and payments is their unwillingness to sell their Bitcoin. And I've heard people say, Like I was talking to Jeff Booth about this one time, and he's just like, well, use your Bitcoin, spend your Bitcoin, and then just go buy more to replace it. And I get it. Like I get his explanation around that, but I feel a bit lazy. You know what I mean? Like, how do we get over this? Because we talk about stack and sats, and it's so important to hold all this stuff, and then we're kind of trying to shift the narrative. Like, well, those things are also really important, but you also should spend your Bitcoin. Like, how do we help this?
Yeah, I can understand the frustration also because buying Bitcoin comes with a cost, and now we're expecting people to cover that cost when they spend it.
Yeah,
that's not very easy when credit cards offer you cash back.
Right.
They offer you their buy and their spend and replace rewards you.
Yeah.
Bitcoin spend and replace punishes you.
Right.
I believe we need better options for people who earn Bitcoin. That is easier said than done because we can't just go to our employers to pay us in Bitcoin. We might not have the option for side hustles, or we might not be selling something.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a contractor and you have a dozen different clients every month, you can accept Bitcoin payments. That's a great way to get to earn. You can then spend whatever you need to spend and hopefully keep as much of the rest as possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a business, you can hope for a couple of customers that pay you with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's not easy for everybody. It's not easy for the salary man and women who have a single source of income.
Yeah. So we have some work to do there. I appreciate that because I do think, earning in Bitcoin, it's a bit, it's novel, and you hear about these stories like professional athletes like asking for some of their salary in Bitcoin or whatever, but they have leverage, right? You know, my employer doesn't care whether I want Bitcoin or not. They're just like, don't get it, don't care. We use dollars, and that's just the system we're in, right? What role do you see cross-chain solutions playing in connecting stablecoins across Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana? And I know in some worlds these words shouldn't even be spoken. But how do you see that interoperability playing?
Lightning, at its very fundamental technology, uses something called a hash time-locked contract, which is a spending condition that I send a transfer to you under the condition that either you claim it if you know the secret to a hash, or I get it back after a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that principle is applicable to blockchains well beyond Bitcoin. And using that principle, we can relatively easily build trustless bridges between those chains. Now, exactly what then the properties of such swaps looks like still depends on the properties of that blockchain, how reliable it is, how long the confirmation time is. But generally, it's within what is reasonable for a Lightning transaction. So as long as we go in and out of Bitcoin, these Lightning or submarine swaps, as we call them, are a convenient way to define interoperability. And if we define that well, then we can swap all sorts of things, not just Bitcoin into ETH, but also stablecoins on Ethereum or Tron into stablecoins on Bitcoin.
Okay.
And then we might have wallets that let you continue to use stablecoins the way you are, but also swap them into your spending wallet in a way that you don't have to trust the operator of a swap service.
Right. Okay. So when we look at some of the greatest strengths of Lightning, how does it compare, or what strengths does Lightning bring to kind of the stablecoin system in relation to other blockchains that maybe Solana or Tron or Ethereum can't really match?
Every kind of blockchain suffers from a confirmation delay, where between you making the transfer and the transfer being irreversible has some kind of delay. And even if that delay is 30 seconds or 60 seconds, that might be too long. On top of that, blockchains don't allow us to reject payments. And as a merchant, I very much want to reject certain payments. I might reject a payment if you're paying too late, for example, because the price has expired, or because I no longer want to conduct in the trade, or I might want to reject an underpayment or an overpayment. I don't want to deal with the issues of refunds.
Right.
I also want to avoid user mistake. I want to be able to cancel an invoice. I want to be able to say, this offer exists until I void it. And Lightning allows us to do all that in a way that blockchains, including Bitcoin, do not.
Interesting.
That makes it very attractive for payments and for commerce, but it makes it difficult to build wallets on top of it. And that is why we still see people demanding on-chain-like experiences, which is what Spark and Arc and Liquid provide, where it's very easy to build a wallet, but you still have this experience of addresses instead of invoices. And Taproot assets on the on-chain level functions like an on-chain protocol. You have addresses and you can send to those addresses at any time and you can decide the amount. But now when you enclose these Taproot assets in channels, in Lightning channels, then they can be transferred instantly at much lower cost with the properties of Lightning that make it so attractive for payments.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. Do you think then that if the blockchains have a problem with this now and Lightning solves that problem, could there be a layer on Ethereum that solves that same problem?
I'm not familiar enough with what that layer would exactly look like, but there have been attempts and there are attempts to build similar things in other blockchains because the principle is relatively easy to replicate. You and I, as peers in the network, decide to open a channel between us.
Right.
And that channel is now it's now funds that are locked on the blockchain with certain conditions. And the most important conditions that we both have a way to unilaterally exit. So even if you become unavailable and I want to get my portions of the funds back, I have to be able to do that.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Leo, I just want to talk about our sponsor for today. Leo, you're familiar with this company.
Yes.
Do you have one of these?
I have one. I have a mug.
So we have
beautiful
a
handmade.
Pretty cool mug from Dave. Dave actually is a guy that I went to kindergarten with, and at a meetup, Bitcoin meetup in my hometown, he was there, and I was like, wow, look at that guy. Sovereign Hardware, he makes these cool mugs. They have the block height in which the mug was created. So those are pretty cool. They're handmade. He also makes seed signers. Do you want to explain what a seed signer is?
A seed signer is not exactly a hardware wallet, but it is a device that lets you generate Bitcoin addresses from a given seed and sign transactions from that seed. So instead of having a dedicated hardware wallet that contains the keys, this is just a device that lets you load your keys, maybe check your balance, even though it's not connected to the internet, check your balance from your mobile device, and sign transactions that take your Bitcoin out of your cold storage. And I think it makes it relatively easy to understand the security properties of your Bitcoin, because now your Bitcoin are only on a piece of paper. And there's no copy of it in your phone. There's no copy of it on your hardware device. If that seed signer gets lost or is stolen, there's nothing on there.
Right.
And you can safely lend out your seed signer to others. Whether you safely borrow a seed signer from others still depend on whether you trust them.
Trust that person.
But now, that's why you can make them yourself.
Right.
So you can assemble them yourself. You can get the parts yourself. I think they're a very cyberpunk thing to own.
We love that, right? Another thing that that they sell at Sovereign Hardware is in these cool boxes we have this stamping kit. And so you can take this and you can stamp in these washers, just a simple washer like you would get from Home Depot, your seed phrase, and it comes with all of the letters and numbers that you would stamp. That way, if you face flood or fire or natural disaster, these will stay. They're not going to burn up. They're not going to melt, and it's a great way to engage in additional security. Do you use something like that yourself?
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I think especially for long-term storage,
Right.
you are best off with keeping the seed somewhere that doesn't degrade.
Right.
I don't think paper is a bad choice. Paper, especially, you should consider using a pencil and not a pen, because the pencil does not have a risk of washing out.
Oh,
pencil
interesting.
can still be read after decades and decades. Whether your pen is still readable after decades, you don't know.
Oh,
Some
interesting.
pens fade and others don't.
Okay.
So use a pencil, use a piece of paper. If you are worried about fire, if you are worried about water, then these washers are ideal.
Yeah.
Even if they rust, they remain somewhat legible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we live in a wet place, don't we, Leo?
Yeah.
Here in Southwest British Columbia, it's okay. So one more question for you. We talked about the strengths of the Lightning Network. Just to wrap things up, what are some of the weaknesses or risks of building stablecoins on Lightning that we might need to address?
So the full potential of Taproot assets is really achieved by being able to separate every single function of stablecoins, of wallets, of payment processors into a different process, into either a different app or into a different company or into a different, a different legal entity that can be distributed. And it's quite beautiful. The issuer doesn't need to have a relationship with the exchange, and the exchange doesn't need to have a relationship with the wallet, and the wallet doesn't need to have a relationship with the payment processor. And that creates a coordination problem. And whenever we build things, we tend to shortcut these coordination problems. And we tend to say, well, how about the exchange and the wallet are one thing? Then we don't have to coordinate with somebody that we don't know. And I believe that the full potential of stablecoins and Lightning only really comes if this is as much decentralized as possible. If we have a single issuer who also builds the wallet, who also controls the exchange, who also runs the payment processor, then the properties that make this protocol so accessible and so competitive are gonna start to dissolve, and it becomes what it is today, in that stablecoins are a relatively gated experience that are actually very difficult to tap in.
Right. That's great. Leo, I really enjoyed speaking with you today. And Leo, over the years that I've known you, I have found you to be, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I really do mean it. I think you have a great ability to break down really, really complex topics and break them down so that, many people can understand them. And I appreciate your approach, your level head and your balanced understanding of the technical and kind of the teaching aspect of this.
Humbled.
I appreciate that. And it is really important because if we want to onboard 1 billion and 10 billion, we need this type of this type of kind of educational approach to Bitcoin. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.